This video is to help you understand how to get started with the assignment of adding a variable definition file to our file that has the data. So follow the instructions for how to download the Organic Foods Superstore customer data, and that will be an Excel file. And will be referring to it as an Excel workbook. And down at the bottom, there's tabs. At this one, currently, because we're just starting, has one tab called the customer's original data. With this little green plus sign, we can add another tab. And each tab we will refer to as a worksheet. So this is a workbook. So have this open, and next to it, you're going to want to have the variable definition file blank worksheet, which is also, it's just a sheet one, but it's in its own workbook file. So that's where you want to get started and have them side by side.
So I want to put a copy of this worksheet into this workbook, which currently just has one worksheet in it called Final Customer's Original Data. Okay. So I'm going to go over here on the right to the variable definition file and down to the tab at the bottom. And if you are on a Mac, I believe it's 2 fingers that would get you the right click functionality. If not, if you're on a Windows based laptop, it's the right click. We're going to go up to move or copy and click create a copy. Then up here in the where we want it to go, we're going to click somewhere in this space or use the drop down arrow and choose the file that I've already named the way I want you guys to name your files, which is your last name, first initial, and then some description of what it is. So I called it BAI 211 data wrangling. You could call it BAI 211. You don't even have to do the BAI 211. You could just say task 1 data cleaning or something. Anyway, I'm going to move it to the end because I'm going to start building out worksheets. And I want, generally would like during the data cleaning portion to have my data, my original data be my first worksheet, but nothing written in stone about that. It's just my personal style. Okay, so now that I've pulled this copy of this into this workbook, I can now close this. I don't need this anymore. And now I'm going to rename by right-clicking and going up to rename this. I'm going to call it the var definitions. And I'm going to kind of abbreviate. I didn't abbreviate this first one. If I start finding I want to see more tabs and it's crowding out, I might rename and shrink down my names on these tabs if I'd like. Okay, but for now, I have the variable definition file, which is empty. And I told you in here is where you're going to put your company name. If you're in the grade option 2, you're going to go ahead and be part of the class simulated company, which is take it to 11. And otherwise, if you're in grade option 1, you put your own company name here. And then the colleagues is going to be, for me, it's the spring 2023 BAI to 11 students. And again, if you are in a simulated company, you would personalize this to your own company. Okay. The first thing I said is, well, we would like to put all the variable names here. And if we go to the data, we see that they are horizontal. And I'm just going to pause for a second and address the whole drop-down filter buttons that are here. The way those get turned on or off is up here across the top to the data tab. There's a sort and filter button. So that kind of toggles them on or off. And the nice thing about having them on is that I can use the drop-down little button on each one and sort the whole thing. It's not going to sort just the column. It'll sort the row, the whole worksheet based on this. So I could go, for example, largest to smallest. Not only did it sort the cust ID variable, but it everything that was on the row with it was also sorted by that. Okay, and so let me go back to how it was. Small, it doesn't really matter at this point, but okay. But we're going to be using those filter buttons a lot. They're very useful. But the first thing we want to do is define what these variables are. So we're going to go across and I showed you this is a little bit of a shortcut, so you don't have to type in every one. I've selected them by holding down my left mouse button as I dragged my cursor across. There may be other ways you do that, but you want to select these, figure that out, because if you can't figure that out, you're going to have trouble. Okay, now we're going to copy this. So you can right click and go to copy, or you can, if you prefer to do things on your keyboard, you can do Control C on a Windows based laptop or Command C on a Mac. And once it is in the memory buffer that you are copying it, you're going to get this dash green line going around it. So now I'm going to come over to the variable definitions file, and I'm going to put my cursor in the first spot where I want the first one. What I want to do is transpose this down. So if you're Windows, you can just go ahead and click this button. Or if you're on a Mac, you have to go to this paste special, which has a lot of the same options. Might have a few more options in there. But we're going to come down to this one that has an arrow going to the right and down, and that's a transpose button. So we've transposed this down. Now what we're going to need to do is fill out this table for our data. It would be really helpful to be able to look at the data while we're doing it. So the other thing I showed you was if you go up here to this View tab at the top, we can go over here to New Window. And when I click New Window, I'm going to get another copy of this entire workbook, which is now, if you notice, it showed up on my other monitor, so I just dragged it over here. But notice this one has a -1 and this one has a -2, kind of to help you keep it straight. And I believe these might be my only 2 Excel files. Yes. So you can resort them by just dragging and putting them side by side. I believe we can also view them and arrange them. And over here we can arrange, I believe we would want vertical. Let's try it. Yeah, so if you hit that vertical button, if you have more than just this open, you're just gonna do it to all of them, and that may not be what you want. But sometimes those arrange all buttons kind of make the job a little quicker. Okay, so on the left, I'm going to go back down here to the bottom and click on the original data so I can actually see my data. And over here on the right, I'm going to work on filling out this table. So cust ID, and I told you that the place you'd want to see this is going to be in your Connect book. Under the library, you should be able to find your eBook because that's where you've been reading. Well, I guess the Connect assignment takes you through the reading and the smart book reading, but if you go to library, you should be able to open the eBook. And I'm going to just open that up here and move it over so you can see that book. And I'm on page 23 in the eBook. It's the first page on chapter 2. And if we scroll down, in here is where we're going to get the definitions of our variables. So what I showed you in class is that cust ID is the customer's identification number. And in class, it would not let me do this, but I think I might be able to. I just highlighted it and hit Control C on my keyboard. Let's see if that works. So if I want to come over here, let's see if I can put that in here. I'm going to click up here on the formula bar, see if I can get it that way. No, it's not going to do it, is it? That's fine. Customers identification number. And what I told you in class is if you notice it spills over from column B over to column C, and it might be nice for it not to do that. And notice that just the size of my monitor allows me to see all the way up here to I. So what I might want to do is take a couple of these columns and I can select, hold down the Control key, maybe, and make just a few of these a little bit bigger. Now, when I've selected them, the ones that have been selected are all going to end up being the same width. So I can make one wider and let the other ones just drag one of them, and it's going to affect all the ones that I've selected. So I selected B, D, and E. And perhaps what I want on these B, D, and E, I just happen to know definition, scale of measurement, and putting all the categorical values may be long, right? They may overflow. So I'm going to go back over here to the home, and some of the stuff is hidden because my window is so small. So if I want to see everything in there, I can make my window bigger. Notice that now I have more options. They were there anyway. So I'm going to click on this wrap text one, but I want to show you where you can find it when your window is narrower. Notice now it changed. If I go to alignment, it's still there. So I can just click wrap text there. So it's set, the formatting that you can't see unless you start typing is set to wrap text. Okay, so now that we know that, we went through this in class. We said, okay, customer ID is not numerical. It's actually categorical. It's like your social security number or your student ID. It's a way of naming you, identifying you, and it's a nominal because it's not nominal. It's not actually measuring something, a quantity of anything. And then it says, if categorical, add the values. This is where I told you that it might be a good idea to just put a little note to self because we're not going to write down, we're not going to include in here the 200 values that we have because we have 200 records, but we do want to look at them. So one way to kind of see them, if there might be repeats. I don't think so. I think they gave us relatively clean data. So we're going to clean it more to get it ready for analysis. It could have been really, really dirty data. So, in some sense, this is one step cleaner. I didn't want to overwhelm you. Okay, so if we look at the data, what the values, the unique values that are in this column look like, we can see that they're all 7-digit numbers. They all start with 15. So let's just make a note to self that that's kind of what we would expect. 15 digits, all start with 15. And then race is just race, nothing too fancy there. It is categorical and it is nominal because there's no ranking. And what we want to put here is we want to put a list of all the values in race. So if you're curious what kind of data was collected, you can quickly look here and see what were the races that were included in their survey. I guess they probably had a bubble option. So what I showed you in class was in order to copy those over and get the unique ones, we hit this drop down and we can see the unique values. There are other ways. We could have done a pivot table, which is a little more advanced. This is just, for me, the quickest way to get them all. But in order to be able to keep this little window open, while I type on the right, that can't happen. It won't let me do that. So my workaround is to do a screenshot of this piece that I want. So I'm going to just capture this in a little screenshot so that it doesn't go away. Well, I know it's in a memory buffer. So normally I get it to pop up on my screen. I'm not sure why it's not working, but I can open up a Word doc real quick. Here's a little Word doc. I don't know. Sorry, you probably don't need to do this. I'm just having to find a place to output that so I can actually see it. Okay, I don't know why it's making me do that, but here we go. Okay, so we're going to put in American Indian. Asian, Black, Hispanic, Pacific, Islander, and white. And what I told you, it's a good idea to get the spelling right here and the capitalization. Excel is tries to help you but it doesn't really, but other software is not as, somebody may want to use this in some other fancier software that really needs to know. Okay. If it's capitalized versus not, stuff like that. Okay. There's workarounds for all that stuff, but okay, birth date. Okay. Birth date was when we said, well, okay, that's numerical and it's discrete. And we're just overlapping just a little bit on the E. I'm going to make column C just a little bit bigger there. Okay, scale of measurement. This was one where we said, okay, if you think about it, it doesn't really make any sense to have 0 birth date. Nobody has 0 as a birth date. So we would, in this case, say this is interval for the scale of measurement when that happens. And we're going to come over here and for the format, if you will, the units are right. Looks like they're by day standard. So we're just going to give a format. So I'll say month, day, year. Okay. Now I'm going to let you keep going on working on a bunch in the middle. I'm going to just give you a couple more examples that I did in class. So spending, we did total spending in 2020. We said that's numerical. And we're going to kind of treat it like it was treat as continuous. So we're going to, because it's got, we have data that goes down to the cent, we're going to kind of treat this as continuous. And notice this is another column I probably should have set up as a wrap text. So let me go into alignment wrap text on that one. Okay. Scale of measurement. It does make sense to have 0 spending. That is a conceptually realistic thing. So we're going to say that this is the ratio scale of measurement. And we're going to say this is in dollars to the penny. Once again, we're overlapping another one. I probably should have set it. I probably should have set the whole thing up to wrap. Anyway, then number of orders was the next one I did in class. And this was, if we look back at our textbook, we saw that number of orders was the total number of orders during the past 24 months. So let's go ahead and put that in. And if we look at the total number of orders, let's scroll to the right. And I think one of the other things I showed you in class, because we were zoomed in a little on this, was that if you can't see the column headings at the top, there's a way to freeze a certain number of rows or columns to the left. So let's say I wanted to be able to scroll to the right here. Let's say I had more things and I wanted to be able to continue to see my column variable names, and I wanted to always be able to see this top part here. I would go, let's say this is the first bit of data that if you imagine a rectangle of data that you are going to scroll through and everything else you want to always remain on your window, you go to the top left corner of what you are going to be scrolling through, what you view as data, as opposed to labels or variable names. And you can go up here to view and go to freeze panes and choose freeze panes. I find that freeze panes tends to be more useful than freeze top row or freeze first column, just because you can do this regardless with freeze panes, and you just probably have to play around with it to get comfortable with how it works. But it does toggle on and off. So I'm going to toggle it on. And so now you can see I can scroll up and the top 5 rows will be visible. And I can scroll to the right and the variable name. So let's say I was to add more columns in our little definition file table for some weird reason. those would stay so I could see that. Okay, that's just another Excel thing. All right, let's go back here and finish filling out. Number of orders, yes, that is numerical and discrete. Scale of measurement, it does make sense to have 0 number of orders, so that's ratio. And for number of orders, what would be the units? Well, they're just counting number of orders, so that's not like easy to decide what units would make sense to put there. But a note to self, maybe by clicking and seeing that there's between 1 and scrolling down, we can see 31. So we'll say here that the number of orders is between 1 to 31. Just a kind of a note to ourselves that that's what's going on. Save this again with your last name and then first initial and then whatever you want to call it. Okay. That's it for this initial video.